Welcome, everybody. We are excited to be here with Dan Arthur today. He has such a unique perspective and philosophy on the arts and how that ties to everything else we learn and how we learn. And so we are going to have a great conversation with him. And I'm going to hand it over to him and let him share a little bit more about his background, what he does, and that philosophy I talked about. So Dan, welcome. Feel free to share your background.
So, regarding my philosophy, about 12 years ago, I was forced to do a master's degree. And it was called Artedemia, my paper. And this is the logo. I came up with it because art equals math equals music. And the reason I know that is because I know the math. And the math is based on the word harmony. In the arts, harmony is based on 3, 4, 5, which is the little logo there. In the music, it's the same thing. So it comes from the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That is the same formula in music because every key note is based on the number 4. And then you have this structure of 3 squared plus 4 squared equals 5 squared. And that means that c squared plus f squared equals a squared. The problem with that is that most people don't know what I'm talking about math-wise, and they also don't know music. And musicians don't know the math either. So here they can play in harmony without realizing that it's based on a mathematical structure. So what happened was after I got my master's, which was, 12 years ago, I started pushing this Artedemia concept, and I did a bunch of different logos. I designed courses. I'm a retired teacher, been retired for 7 years. And I've had time to actually go back over all the courses I designed and taught. I taught for 18 years at the college level. So, so this is what I've come up with in terms of a new course design, because every single course that I've designed connects directly to this image and this concept. And I can show you that by switching my share here. All right, so here is my course interface. It interfaces with 6 subjects. You can see at the top, I have the art equals math equals music logo, which is part of my Artedemia strategy here. And then you'll see I've placed that logo inside each of the other boxes. So let me tell you what those boxes are. On the left, and now it's all foggy, blurry, which is too bad. On the left is a STEM. Science, technology, engineering, and math. And you can see that since art equals math equals music, I've stuck it in the middle there and it connects. On the right-hand side, you see history, which I call chronetics. And I have a bunch of cartoon characters, which are called archaeologists. And so that's the other issue that is not obvious here. I'm a cartoonist. I've been a professional cartoonist since the age of 19. And that's my primary love. So I've taken all of the serious stuff from my years in academia and added all of my cartoon stuff. So as we go around these subjects, you can see that there are 6. And the next one is psychographics on the right. That deals with the way we think. On the left is Phonartica, which is basically language we designed. On the bottom is the Biz plan, which I designed with an old friend of mine who's in finances. So with these 6 subjects, I can connect to any subject in the academic curriculum. So let me see if I can get a new share here. All right, so let me walk you through this. For some reason, I can't get this completely full screen. Anyway, I can walk through it this way anyhow. Okay, so here you see at the top, I have Artedemia Learning Redesigned. That is the whole theme of Artedemia. I've written a book about it. I've written 8 books. So basically all of these images are from my 8 books. And I designed and taught 20 courses when I was in college. Before that, I, you know, traveled the country teaching kids of all ages how to draw. So it evolved from that. We're focusing on the art code here. And then as you can see, I've developed these cartoon characters for each of the different subject areas for my curriculum. So this is basically my Artedemia curriculum dashboard based on my first book, Artademia. So then what we have is Arts Wars, which has a bunch of little characters here. We have the operette and the symphonic and the Zong and Dancers. And they're based on a satire of the arts of the Star Wars characters. As you move around, we've got all these other characters involved in these various activities. Star Tuning I wrote with a good friend of mine, Jay Louder, who's an excellent musician, but I'm not. But I started designing guitars 30 years ago. I've designed about 15 of them now, and I've changed the fret placement. This is my newest one, which we can talk about later if you want. So these three things here, art, math, music, connect with these formulas, which are academic formulas. It's just that nobody teaches the music part of it because apparently they don't hang out with musicians and they don't know how to do this. I actually learned it by designing guitars because you have to know where to put the frets. And if you don't know the math, you can't put the frets there. You can't change the frets. Even luthiers that built my guitars did not know this math. They inherited a formula from their parents or something, but they don't know how to change the fret placement. So with that, since I grew up as a cartoonist, and I grew up as a cartoonist because my dad was a cartoonist and he taught me at the age of 8. My mother was an art major and she was a good artist, better than I am. But between the two of them, and both of them had a sense of humor, otherwise they would have never married each other. So I kind of was stuck with that. So it was very difficult for me teaching college or anything without having to stick my sense of humor into it. So I always did it with cartoons that I'd already created. So it's a double layer. It's a serious thing, which people get lost when I talk about the math. And then there's also this kind of comedy underground. But I taught for a couple of years in a special ed district, and I had a kid that was about 13, 14, I guess, and he was in middle school. And he could draw really well. He was drawing comic strips, all excited. And then he fill all these balloons in, and then he couldn't write anything down there. And I says, "What's the problem?" He goes, "My teacher's going to kill me because I don't know how to spell. And if I spell this stuff wrong, she's going to be mad at me." And I said, "Well, guess what? In the world of comedy and cartooning, you don't have to spell anything correctly. All you got to do is put quotation marks around it and spell it any way you want to, because it becomes the dialogue of the character." And I gave him some examples of cartoonists that had done that. So that caused me to write a poem for him, and it caused me to develop what I call phonartica, and specifically phonetics. And so I wrote a book about that. And the whole idea was to teach kids how to spell phonetically, which is the way I learned when I was a kid, but I'm an old geezer now. So I don't know if they teach that anymore, but it seems like they teach memorization. So from the phonetics book, I developed this whole thing called phonartica, and I added the math and the music to it. I actually rewrote the old alphabet song that everybody has to learn because I always hated it. And my friends recorded it. I animated it. It's up on my YouTube channel. And that was all based on my Star Tuning drawing instruction system. And that led to all of these different little characters based on phonetics, which are the sonants, the consonants or consonants, and the ignore ants. So all of them are actually little animated characters. They actually speak with sign language as well. And I use them to teach phonetics to basically behavioral disordered or kids with disabilities. Okay, so that's probably more of a ramble than you need to know. But over here on the other side, we have art tech. Art Tech developed quite a while ago because we started doing all of this technology stuff. And I think I mentioned to you once before, I've presented all over for years, and I started doing that a couple of years ago again. And I went to ISTE and studied up on how they were doing their coding. And of course, they missed the whole art equals math equals music code. So again, adding that, I can connect right to STEM on the math side and add art and music because it's the same harmonic art. Even Tesla knew that. So I studied Tesla a lot, and it connects to him. So not only that, but I add my guitars into the art tech because I know how to build them. I know how to design them. And so if everybody knew that, they could be building guitars that or other musical instruments that nobody's ever imagined, because it creates music that you've never heard before. So, you know, I have several of them right here. Then we go down to, here's Crinetics, which I call arteology as well, because I've got these little characters based on actually a friend of mine at school who is always into bugging everybody about what's the criteria. So I have the Criterion family with all these little archaeologists, and they travel around the world and look at ancient sites. I was actually asked to do that by the Gen Ed department. They wanted me to create a thing called humanities course for visual culture. So I wrote and gave that course to a group of about 24 students from all over the world. And I asked them to bring in their musical instruments and their songs and their religious background and share it with the class. And so from that, I developed this whole thing about how history, academic history is designed on writing. There's writing and there's pre-writing, you know, prehistory. So archaeologists study history before writing, which is all of the, you know, the temples and the labyrinths underground and all kinds of things. So that while it's serious on the one hand, because these little archaeologists are always running around there, it adds some humor to it. Then over on the other side is psychographics, which I mentioned earlier. This is based on a satire of old philosophers, which I call the philosophers, and how they think, how they used to think, how academia basically alienates art students. And that I say that from personal experience. So I have all these little alienated characters that hang out in the psychographics community with the philosophers. And I also have, before I retired, I asked all my students and fellow teachers to tell me what kind of character they would like me to draw, because I said when I retire, I'm going to do my memoirs and I'm going to turn all of you into cartoon characters. So you got a choice. You can let me choose it or you can choose it. So the school psychologist actually chose to be a skunk. And he told me why. So, you know, so I thought it was great to design this character for him. And actually, he's never seen it because I haven't seen him since I retired. But it's called Sentimental Counseling Services. He's Dr. Skunkle. And again, most of these characters are based on real people. Some of them know it, some of them don't. And this gets us into how you turn all of this stuff into a business. And that's why I'm interested in your organization, because there's very few places that teach artists about business and how to make or start a business. So I designed VizBiz for an old friend of mine, and I actually have a VizBiz game. I think I sent you a picture of that, but it's based on this: team target, tools, and flow. The tools are in the financial section, and basically you don't need to learn that until you get your whole business together, because you've got to do so much more to figure out what kind of business you have before you worry about banking and finance. So all of these 4 areas are separate. I deal with them separately, and it's based on my own experience as a freelance artist and then starting my own business years ago. So that becomes this whole VizBiz thing. And again, I can add all of these little things of art, math, and music in there. I've also added characters here. This is my little schnoodle and my little schnacker. They're actual breeds of dogs, and I've had them. And I also developed the disruptors for the sake of business, because we are disrupting business with these characters. And there's a whole long, history story about how the little schnoodles and schnackers found the little disruptors when they were just born and become good friends and all that. So you can see I can ramble on forever and ever, and it probably makes no sense. But the thing is I've written entire courses. I've written 20 of my own. They've all been approved by the accrediting bodies, and they're all serious. They're all according to format. They've been approved. But what I did then is, after I did that, I went through and added all my characters to them. And now they're my own curriculum. It's the foundation of Artademia. So this is actually my course dashboard. I'm not a good writer. I've written 8 books. I'm on my 9th. I don't like to write. I've got 800 books on my phone that I don't like to read, because I can't think rationally with words. I have to do the pictures first. Everything I've done here, I did a picture first, and then the only way I could write or talk about it is to talk about the picture. So as you can see, once I get on a roll, I can talk a lot, but it's because I got the pictures right in front of me. And I think to some degree, that's an issue. It was an issue with almost all of my students.
Dan, it's so fascinating. And I think when I look at it and I think about how you've incorporated, or I guess you haven't incorporated, it's there. The art is there, right? It's
Already
there,
there.
but you've
Yeah.
identified it in a way that most people don't see. But in a lot of regards, I think a lot of creatives see it but don't know it, or it's not in, it hasn't been in their K through 12 education or college
Right.
education growing up. So I was listening and I can't even remember where I was. It was somebody talking on the radio, some station, and it was somebody who was saying how, well, because they're an artist, they see the pictures and they didn't realize that everybody else didn't always see things in pictures. And
Right.
this literally, I think, was a week before we talked. And I was like, that just seems, and I am more of a math person, an analytical person. Give me a good spreadsheet. That's me. My sister and my mom and my grandmother and my grandfather, very artists, very visual and things. So, I do well with pictures, but not quite the same way that they see and they do things, or they see
Right.
colors rather than image, like just different ways people see things. So when we were talking, and I know you were at SEA 2 years ago, right?
Right. Yeah.
And just kind of really fascinated, but I'm going to be honest, confused as well, just because even though I'm a math person and hearing it and seeing it, but the overall message was that art is everywhere. Art is in everything. And
Right.
so when we started looking at putting this event together and really talking about all these students with art degrees and creative degrees going out now into a world with the pandemic, and where they maybe aren't seeing that these art skills are everywhere, are needed everywhere, are part of everything, is then how do you, for students getting ready to graduate, how do you take now this knowledge, even if you don't fully understand the math behind it all, but
Mhm.
understand that art is part of everything,
Mhm.
the technology, the math, the, history, all of this.
Mhm.
And how does that help them prepare? Or what can they use with at least a general understanding as they start out on their careers, kind of with this whole idea of this art innovation concept that you have?
Mhm. Well, again, it's a long story, but I'll try and shorten it. Here's the problem with innovation. I've been innovating in the arts for 40 years. Okay, I did my first book 40 years ago because I was teaching grade school kids how to draw. And here's how it happened. They were preparing for a career in the arts, and they're 5th and 6th graders. And so they asked me to come in and talk to them. I don't know, word of mouth. They found out I had an art business, and I was doing commercial art. So I came in with my portfolio, and part of my portfolio was cartoons. All the other stuff was stuff I had done, my professional portfolio. They could care less about the other stuff. They said, we want to do cartoons. Teach us how to draw cartoons. I had never done that before, even though I've been doing it since I was 8. Nobody's really interested in learning how to do it. And so I said, okay. So I spent the summer once a week going there and teaching them how to draw cartoons. And what happened is that I've been drawing those things for so long, I had forgotten the steps you have to go through to learn to draw a character. For example, somebody wanted to draw Donald Duck, and I go, well, you got to draw some other things first because the beak is in perspective and you can't draw it. It looks different from the side view than it does from the front view, than it does from the 3/4 view. And the 3/4 view is very complicated because you have to learn to see in 3 dimensions. It's not just a drawing anymore. It's a 3-dimensional thing. It's not a 2D thing. And I mean, it's one of those things where intuitively, when you've been drawing all your life, you understand that, okay. So what that forced me to do is I said, okay, which characters do you want to learn to draw? And so each one of them gave me a character, and there were 2 different classes that were clumped together, so they were a year apart, and there was about 15 of them, I guess. So I had 15 characters that they gave me that they wanted to draw, and then I had to sort them by level of complexity. You know, which one do you draw first, which one do you, and so that developed my whole star tuning program. I mean, that, and the funny thing is I was very selfish. I wanted to become Walt Disney and rich and famous and all this stuff. And then when they asked me that, it changed my whole life, because I went, this is more important than me becoming, you know, Walt Disney. They need to draw the same way that I learned to draw. And I was lucky because my dad was a cartoonist, although he told me, he says, you will never make a living doing this. This is just my hobby. He was in the coal business. His family were coal miners. And so just by the fact that he taught me at the age of 8 to become a cartoonist changed my whole life. Otherwise, my future would have been in the coal mines. So I told everybody this, you know, I said, look, you may have your own coal mine waiting for you out there, and this is your way out, because this is my way out. So that's how that happened. And ever since then, everybody kept asking me to do something else. I never wanted to be a teacher. It didn't, you know, it never crossed my mind, but everybody kept asking me to teach them something. And so I never really had to look for a job until I came out of the service, because, you know, it's just like it was normal. Oh, Dan, he's the artist, you know, go have him do it. But when I got out of the service, I realized that I was going to be a commercial artist, blah, blah, blah. So it was during this time when I was a commercial artist that I was asked to go help these kids. And so, I mean, I've been a creative director, art director, you know, worked for advertising agencies, all this kind of stuff. And at some point after doing this for a while, I just said, you know, this is an evil empire that we're in, and I'm just going to get out of it and get into education. So anyway, that's probably not an answer to your question, but the issue to me in terms of helping other students find their way in the arts is that really you have to start thinking outside the box. And the only way you can do that is to realize there is a box. You're in a box, you're inside it. You can't see out of it. You're walled in. And part of it is a result of education, the way it's been constructed. It's academic, it's based on text. There's 7,000 different languages on the planet, and every governmental system does the same thing. They want you to learn their language, they want you to work for them, they want to be the boss, they want to be the king, they want you to be servants, and you serve their needs. The thing that really irritated me so much 12 years ago is I realized that I was getting my master's degree after having gotten a bachelor's degree, and nobody, and they're in the arts, a Bachelor of Arts, Master of Arts. Nobody in education hires an artist to be an artist. Nobody. There's entire schools that teach you to become an artist, but they won't hire you. You have to go out and be hired by a game company or an advertising agency or something to sell something to somebody. You might be, as a student with an art degree, you might be searching for the wrong thing. Usually what I found with my own students, the thing they're searching for does not exist in the world of employment. The world that exists out there is beyond what they are offering us, and you have to find what it is. And that's why it's important to me to have groups like you that say self-employment in the arts. We really want to work for ourselves and with our friends. We don't want to work for somebody else who doesn't get it. And literally every executive in a company, um, they don't think like artists. They don't want to think like artists. They tolerate us to make money for themselves. And there's got to be a way to get out of that. And that's been my path of searching for that direction. Probably more than you wanted to know about that.
No, no, that well, and I think, we've done data collection, and there's some great surveys out there, and it's something like 75% um, of students graduating with art degrees. This is if anybody wants to know, it's the Strategic National Arts Alumni Project, SNAP, SNAAP, and you can look it up. You can see the data, and they have done a tremendous job of collecting data from different types of universities, different all across the country. So it is a pretty diverse group that they collect, and it's something like 75% will be self-employed in some way over their career.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of reasons for that, but in the sense of, if you look at it more from the sense of artists being able to take control, and determine their own future and create their own future and use their skill sets in ways to really propel their future forward, is always, I think the ideal for people. Because then you're more in control of that.
So literally what I would say to everybody, you have to look at the degree you got, or the portfolio that you have, because you have to do a new portfolio for every single business you're going to apply to. You don't have one portfolio. You customize it for that particular job, and you have to want to really do that job. You have to love that job. You have to know what it is. And so you need to redo your portfolio for that job. And the way you'll have to do it is, guess what? You got to learn to draw, because learning to draw forces you to see the proportions of everything. The computer is not going to create beautiful art that means anything, because it doesn't think like you think. It does not think like an artist thinks. So no matter what, you've got to redo your portfolio for any job that you want. That forces you to make the decision of what you really want. What is your life about? Your life is not about a job. It's about you. And the best thing I can recommend, because I did this when I got out of the service, I didn't know what was going on in the real world. And I went on 40 interviews in the Chicago area. And I was offered half a dozen jobs during that time. And I just said, nah, I'll think about it. And I went to another interview, because I wanted to see what was out there and what they expected me to do for them. And then I wanted to pick something that would also be doing something for me. And most of the students I had were terrified of going to an interview. They didn't know how to dress. Their mom bought them as a suit. They did all of this silly stuff that had nothing to do with them. It had to do with, well, you need this job. You got to get a job. You got to make money. You got to please this person and that person. Don't do that. Especially, you have to know the job so well you know how to dress. We had guys going into with corduroy suits on that their mothers bought them to be hired by a tattooed guy in a black death t-shirt. He doesn't care about your suit. He wants to see your portfolio. He wants to know that you're dependable, that you can get to work on time. And so that's why I say, not only do you have to do your portfolio, but you have to have knowledge of the company that you're going to go apply for. And you have to want that job. Otherwise, don't bother going. I mean, you can go and just learn something like I did. I learned more doing interviews than ever. And I could pick the right job for me.
I'm going to just comment a little bit on the dress and the attire. It brings back flashbacks to an internship interview I went on. And so I was a marketing major and had actually done research on the way women were viewed in their business attire, right? Totally strict business. And I went into interview. The internship was at I'll keep the company name out of it, but a creative company, a company that dealt with, was all creative was what they did. Right. And I went in my blue suit, a very straight, blue suit, into this interview, into this creative environment where I didn't fit in at
Mm.
all, and then shared the research project all about how women are viewed and how the blue suit is what you should be wearing. I mean, that when they asked to see this research project I did in school, I can look back and laugh now. I didn't get called back. I didn't, and I know, looking back, you can see that. So I think it is very, very important to know when you are going in for those interviews, who are you interviewing? And, colleges try to, do the best to prepare you for this idea. And you can Google search and you can read all these different things, but when in doubt, be professional, but know who you're going in and where you're going
Right.
into. Because
Right.
again, that blue suit is not a positive, was not a positive check mark for me in that interview. So again, I just
Right.
wanted to share that because that was
Yeah.
kind of, I look back and laugh now. I was devastated I didn't get called back. I know now why. I mean, at least one of the reasons why.
Yeah.
So that. You see art in everything. What are some tips and tools, things that you can do? So here I am. I'm in a job that I'm not feeling the creative, opportunity that I want. What would you tell me? What can I do? Where can I look for that art in that job? Or how do I find that job? Or art in that job? How do I change maybe my mindset a little bit to look more the way you've done with all this curriculum, with everything that you've touched? You see the art in all of it. You see the way the art mixes with everything in it.
Mhm.
What would you tell somebody like that? Obviously, the hope and the goal would be maybe they don't have to be in that job too long. But while they're in that job, what would you tell them to find that creativity, that art?
Well, what helped me through that was, again, the sense of humor. At some point when you're depressed or you're angry because you have bosses that make you feel both, So you have to look at it as a resource. These are characters that you need to develop. Like I said, most of my cartoon characters I did not make up. They're people I met, so I just turn them into cartoons. And you want to write down, you want to keep a journal and write down why you were mad, find out what happened. This is your memory. This is your life. You can use it later. You don't have to sell something right now, but you need to understand everything about what you're going through and why you're going through it the way you are. So to me, everything I look at everything, even if it's really bad, I'll say, well, nothing else, I'll get a cartoon character out of this, or I'll get a comic strip out of this. You have to look at it that way. So you have to take advantage of the negative as well as the positive.